kind of my way of saying it's not my ego that's doing this. It's from outside of my ego. Ego's get in the way, cause a lot of problems.
Oh yeah. Now, why don't you tell everybody about the book? Of Margery.
The new book?
No, let's go. No.
It's a workbook for people that are interested in reincarnation, that may want to explore past lives, but don't have the time or the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to work with a proper parapsychologist, because it is expensive. It is very expensive. And I tell people all the time, do not go to a psychic to get a past life reading. You have to do the work yourself. You have to. So that's why I created this book. And my friend Gordon, who's been on your show, is very excited about it, because he says there's nothing like it. But what it is, we go through, start at the beginning of your life from your early memories, and I've got lots of questions in there, lots of things for you to think about. And it's a workbook. It's printed on 8.5 by 11. It's got beautiful full color illustrations in it, a lot of bridges. I call transitioning back and forth from life to life crossing the bridge, because that's what it is. You go across the bridge and you're in one area of life, and you cross back over and you're in another area. When we're on this side, it's Earth. When we're on the other side, it's eternity. And we go over there and we take a rest. And then we come back. We come back across the bridge, same bridge, back and forth, back and forth. So it's important to me to get this word out, because I lost my twin sister a year and a half ago, and when she first got sick, we had so many talks about reincarnation and the fact that we knew we had been together in past lives, and we knew we were going to be together again. When she found out she had a terminal illness, you know what she said? She said, "Oh, well, that's a bummer." And then she told me, I'm not worried. She said, "I'll cross the bridge and I'll be back." And she went through 6 weeks of the most incredible physical challenges a human being could go through, totally at peace, which was good for her family, because she didn't have us in turmoil. And she peacefully transitioned to the other side. So I know she's there. I'm comfortable with her being there. She may reincarnate before I pass on in this life, before I cross the bridge. I might get to know her again. Or I'll just connect with her somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, that is a big possibility. I mean, now my feeling is that people, when they reincarnate, they seem to improve with each reincarnation. But then I've talked to people on here that say, no, that's not true. When a person can reincarnate, they can actually go downhill from, a previous life. So...
Well, Brian Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss, is a psychiatrist who writes a lot about reincarnation, and I highly recommend his books. They're all wonderful. He comes from the same school of thought that I do, that each life is a learning lesson, and sometimes we do regress. When you go to first grade and Sally, your little friend next door, goes to school with you, she might go all the way to your high school or college with you. That's what I call a soulmate. A soulmate is somebody that you travel through life to life with. We tend to put sex to it in this realm. We say, oh, your soulmate is the person you're supposed to be married to for all your life. But no, a true soulmate is somebody that you're going through life to life to life with. And we all have lots of soulmates. So that's what I talk about, and we have these lessons that we learn with our soulmates. And once we learn them, we can move on to a different class, a different lesson. And each life will afford the opportunity for maybe one profound lesson, maybe multiple lessons, and kindness and joy and peace and empathy and understanding and acceptance. A lot of spiritual lessons we need to learn. Once you learn them, then you can choose to stay on the other side or come back and help teach. I hope I'm almost to the teaching phase.
Wow. Now, what I was going to ask you at the first, I've had a couple people texting me while we're doing the show here. They wanted to know about your previous book, Finding Margaret.
Oh, Finding Margaret?
Yeah.
Well, it's a true story. All the names are fictionalized in the book. In the book, my character's name is Emma. I did that because I wrote the book in third person because I wanted to step back from all I had been through, and I didn't want to say, oh, me this and oh, me that. So it's written in Emma's voice. It's written in third person. My daughter read the book when I gave it to her, and she said, Mom, if you're going to write this book, a true story about our family, she said, I want to have my real name. So my daughter, Allison, is the only person in the book that has their actual real name. Allison is my daughter. But everybody else has got the fictionalized name, but it's absolutely true. It's well documented between my parapsychologist, all the work I did with him, between the work that we did with an airline, and I don't want to give away any more, but we did a lot of work with the airline that's about preventing a tragedy here in Atlanta. Legal records, things that I was dealing with legally with the county and with the state. It's all documented and court recordings and stuff like that. And then medical records, because during this period of time I developed a very unusual medical condition that the neurosurgeon wasn't able to identify. But a past life session found out what was going on.
Oh, wow.
And I did recover from it. Yeah. Past lives are very powerful. There's lots of cases of children being born with scars and from a past life injury.
Well, Gordon was saying
usually
that.
Trauma from the immediate
Yeah,
past life.
That, or what do you call that? Not a scar, but where they're birthmarks.
Birthmarks.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
that's so interesting that it matched right up with what the previous one was. But one thing me and Gordon were talking about, or I was telling Gordon, there was a case in I think India. Maybe I'm wrong on the country, but there was a little boy, that kept telling his parents that this guy, he was a young little kid, maybe like 5-6 years old. The guy in their little village killed him. Mm-hmm. And kept telling that to his teacher, his parents, to everybody. And finally, the parent, one of the parents took him to the local police department. He told a story and just basically to pretty much keep the kid quiet, they let the kid take him where he said where his body was. So they started digging up, and all of a sudden they found the body. And then they found where he was killed, with a blunt to the head because it left a hole in the head. And they confronted the guy, and the guy confessed that he killed a little boy and buried him there. But this kid knew all the details, And
I've read the transcript of that case, and it's fascinating. And when you read, and see, the thing about it is, in India, reincarnation is more widely accepted than it is here.
Yeah, now it was India. I wasn't sure on the country. That's why I was.
It was in India.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Dr. Ian Stevenson did work, all over the world documenting these sort of things with children. And he was a researcher. He did it strictly for pure research. And trying to read some of his work is pretty daunting task.
Well,
he's not simple-minded like me and just tells little stories. He has lots of research. Carol Bowman has kind of picked up from his work, and she's a wonderful writer, and I highly recommend her books too. She's written some wonderful books on children's past lives.
Well, that's what got me into believing it, because not just the case of the little boy in India. Then we go to the UK, where the one kid was going around telling his parents that he, during World War II, he was a fighter pilot. He knew the group he was in, where it was located. He knew people's names. He also, knew how he died, and it all matched up. And then it got to like that me and Gordon were talking about, when the kid hit 7 years old. Boy, it just kind of went away. Now, I don't know if it goes away on its own, or it's because when you're in school, if you have imaginary...
I think it's well, for one thing, parents, especially in this country, it kind of scares them. Now, I write about this in my book, Finding Margery, a case with a friend of mine who happens to be a twin, and her little boy when he was 3, and how he kept telling her these stories, and she was so scared, and she called me because she knew I knew something about reincarnation, and we had many, many talks about it, and it gave her a lot of peace to know what was going on. But what had happened when this girl was about 14, her father was a test pilot for the Air Force, and they lived up near North Carolina, and he was out testing a new jet one day, and something went wrong, and he stayed in the jet rather than bailing out because he knew he was close to a school. So he didn't bail out in time. He did divert the jet away from the schoolyard. But he bailed out so late that he fell into trees, his parachute didn't open, broke his back, and killed him. Well, she and her twin sister were just so devastated by this. They never, ever talked about it. Now, I remembered the story because I remember hearing it about in the news, and he was hailed a hero, and he was. He did die a hero. But she was just so devastated. Now, this is a girl who was very, very ill with polio at the time, so she was dealing with a lot. You know, fast forward to 20 years, and she has this new baby. His name is Ben, and when Ben's about 3 years old, he starts telling her that he picked her to be his mommy. And she said, "You picked me to be?" He said, "Yes, because I used to be your daddy in another life, and I was a pilot. And my plane crashed, and I died, and I didn't get to be with you, so I came back."
Oh, wow. But
it was quite disturbing and quite troubling to her at times. But we got through it, and, you know, I helped her through it, and it gave her a lot of peace and understanding to know that this wonderful soul that she had loved so dearly as a small child was back in her life. Now, Ben doesn't remember any of it, has no recollection of it whatsoever.
Well, you know, one thing I was going to say, Gordon, his own adopted son, you know, remembering, you know, and I think he was like in his 20s, but he remembered being on the Titanic.
I was going to say, yes, he has very clear memories of the Titanic. And it seems to me, it's not always this way, but many of these children that come in with these stories have died tragically, like Ben. His grandfather died in a plane crash. People, obviously, that died on the Titanic had, you know, a tragic ending to that life.
Oh, well, hey, so, I gotta say, interrupt you. I gotta say, it's way worse than what you ever could imagine by reading or, you know, seeing those movies. You know, even the older movie, it was made in the late 50s of the Titanic. One of my guests, Timothy Cullen, his wife's great uncle survived the Titanic sinking, and he was one of the lucky ones. But he was saying how bad it was, you know, how many people were, you know, screaming, you know, wanting to be rescued. And he said it got so bad that even people like the great uncle was telling that they would have people on the boat, you know, the lifeboat, and they would kind of be going crazy. And they actually, other people in the lifeboat would kill the people because, you know, they couldn't handle it. So they killed them and, you know, made room then for other people to get on the boat. But he was even saying that the great uncle was, when he was telling the story, that's what kept a lot of the people even surviving, is that when they did kill a few people, the warm blood, you know, it got really intense. But I mean, that was a really horrid thing to have to go through.
When you think about it, and when I was going through all my trauma, and of course I wrote about it in the book Fighting Margaret, I had a very dear friend who was very intuitive like me, and she also believed in reincarnation. And she was talking about a plane crash, and it happened down in around Mexico City, and a lot of people were killed. And she was dreaming about that plane crash at the time it happened. And she was asking all these souls, because she saw these souls departing in this plane crash, why they all died together. And they said, because we had a lesson to teach the earth.
Wow.
I think whenever there's a tremendous tragedy like that, there is ultimately some powerful lesson that we all need to learn. For example, with the Titanic, if I'm not mistaken, afterwards, the rules for boats and